Australia's a wonderful place to visit, but boy, they really get you when you try to leave the airport. So if I was just to take the direct train from Brisbane to Central Business District, it cost me about $25 each way. So I managed to get a bus to the DFO shopping centre with my mate Tim, and got some very classy insoles. So check out my new insoles, mate. Very classy, very nice. Right, just bargain price $30 for my new insoles. When you're walking 10 miles a day, you really appreciate quality insoles. So yeah, you could probably buy new shoes for 60 or 100 Australian dollars just right with the insoles. Now I'm saving money. I took the free bus to the DFO shopping center. Now I'm riding the bus for about $5. I'm $25 ahead of the game. I basically bought myself a fancy pair of new insoles just by skipping the very convenient train from the Brisbane airport, using my ingenuity and my mate Tim. And here we are in glamorous, gorgeous Brisbane, Australia, the capital of Queensland, or in the southeast Queensland. It's about noon here on Thursday, December the 15th. Got a few hours until my next flight. I'm just going to eat up the data on my phone. I was watching the World Cup game earlier on my phone via SBS. Saw France go through with a 2-0 hard-fought victory over Morocco. So I'm being a good citizen, trying to stay away from the COVID, mate. Never felt healthier. So glad people around me have been getting sick, but I've been staying healthy. Clean living, mate. Now, I normally don't wear a mask. Just wearing this high quality mask that I bought on Amazon, just on special occasions. Just wore a mask on the plane, started wearing a mask on the train, wearing a mask on the bus, and we're starting to enter glamorous downtown Brisbane. So I lived here for about 5 months, from September of 1989 till May of 1990, when I had really bad chronic fatigue syndrome. I thought that maybe a change of location would help me. That's when I quit UCLA. Came and lived with my sister and my brother for 9 months. Trying to get a new lease on life. So we're heading into glamorous downtown Brisbane. Big tall buildings. Really good quality public transport here. Really nice people. All law-abiding citizens. I bought my TransLink Go card, so I can go all over Brisbane just for the bargain price of $10, mate. Look like glamorous Toyota store, mate. holding your breath with excitement as we approach the central business district of Brisbane. Now, I have a friend here who lived here for 30 years and hated it. She just thought it was just a two-bit little town divided by a dirty brown river, the Brisbane River. So Brisbane's not near the ocean. You want to go to the ocean, you have to drive an hour south to Surfers Paradise. So you may have seen on the news about 6 months ago how Brisbane was getting flooded. So the Brisbane River was getting flooded. Just coming from the airport right now. Had a bit of a stopover on my glamorous journey through Queensland, Australia. Ah, skyscrapers. That must mean the central business district. There's the, I presume that was the Brisbane River. You had floods. The whole eastern seaboard of Australia was just deluged. Climate change, mate. Climate change is destroying Australia. So I want to play you this interesting New Yorker article about a Nobel Prize winner who ended up becoming a warlord. So how would a Nobel Peace Prize winner become a warlord? I think it sheds light on interesting philosophical issues, mate. Because almost all of us have the capacity for peace, and almost all of us have the capacity to wage war, like blokes in particular. When blokes size another bloke up, they're sizing up, would I sacrifice my life for this bloke, or would I be willing to take out this bloke? And sometimes peace is the best strategy for your people, for your situation, and then the situation changes and you become a warlord. So the New Yorker article just finds it incongruous. This Nobel Peace Prize winner in Ethiopia became a warlord. But I don't find it so shocking. Then there's another interesting article I saw from Texas Monthly about aromatherapy for long COVID. And I absolutely believe that aromatherapy for long COVID can work because you're giving people individualized attention. I don't know about you, but there are certainly times in my life when I was just absolutely desperate for a bit of individualized attention. I remember I was working a job in the fall of 1986. No, the summer of 1986, and the landscaping job is an absolute killer job. And most miserable job I'd ever had. And then on the third day, we went to this rich guy's house, Doug Hanslick. He owned Dominion Enterprises, and he was just so nice. He recognized me. I was fully human to him. He recognized that I was from Australia. He mentioned that his youngest daughter wanted to go to Australia, and he just made me feel like a mensch. He made me feel like a human being. And so, after feeling like just a cog in a machine, digging ditches, swinging a pick, swinging a shovel, I finally started feeling like a human being. So yeah, I think a little bit of individualized attention can help someone, get over some difficulty. Like long COVID is just another respiratory illness. Respiratory illness, there's often quite a bit of time that it takes before recovery. Like you have a full-on flu, like something gets into your lungs. Yeah, it's not abnormal that it takes you a few weeks to get over it. And so, yeah, I think absolutely a little bit of individualized attention and some nice aromatherapy, right, could help. So I'm a big believer in the placebo effect. I think a lot of people mock the placebo effect or use the idea of a placebo effect as kind of to deride something. Oh, it's got nothing better than the placebo effect. Oh, you think that just simply worked because of the placebo effect. I am totally down with something working because of the placebo effect. If you can harness the placebo effect in your life, aren't you ahead of the game? Like, doesn't it give you a strength and a power to overcome things in your way? So yeah, like taking a bit of vitamin C or some other supplements, as long as the supplement's not damaging, yeah, it can give you a placebo effect. Just like think about those religious Orthodox Jews who invest in the stock market just to open up a way for God to bless them. Right? You open up a channel for a new source of blessing or strength or help. So life is tough. We need all the placebo effects we can get. Right? There are all sorts of irrational, non-rational beliefs that we can hold. And they strengthen us. They better equip us to deal with the struggles in life. And this is beautiful downtown Brisbane. I think Princess Diana came through here, and like hundreds of thousands of people turned out. And before her, I think Queen Elizabeth came through here, and they had a massive parade in her honor. Let's see, how far do I have to go? Yeah, mate. No worries. Where the hell are we? Oh. Let me get this bloody mask off. That's so much better. Okay, we're in gorgeous, beautiful downtown Brizzy. The glamour, the wealth must be blowing you away. Here we go, Brisbane, here we go. Brisbane Central Traffic Area. Okay, what the hell? Where's the river? This looks nice. Very classy. I don't know. Maybe there are other better places. I want to tell you about this Ethiopian warlord. Oh. Here we go. Here we go. Okay, Chinatown. What do we got here? Valley Pool. Fortitude Valley. So here, Fortitude Valley is a pretty dicey place. So hold on to your wallet in Fortitude Valley. James Street Precinct. Brunswick Street Mall. So many choices. Let's go see this nice little pool. Boy, I really have to work on my cinematography skills. Anyway, there's this Ethiopian Nobel Peace Prize winner. And the New Yorkers are shocked that he became a warlord. And as a good situationist, I'm not shocked at all, because the situation determines whether you should go, okay, what American city is Brisbane most comparable to? Poughkeepsie on the Pacific. So my friend loathes Brisbane. Lived here for 30 years and she thought it was just a dirty hole with a dirty river running through it. Disavow. When I visited here in 2000 for a couple of weeks, so in year 2000 my family flew me out here at their expense if I just consult the doctors of their choice. And so I saw a psychiatrist and a neuro doctor and other doctors. And I got to spend almost a month in Australia, including 2 weeks in Brisbane. There were 4 synagogues here. Spent Shabbos at the oldest synagogue. And that was before 9/11. So this was April 2000. So they didn't have security guards out front. Bloody hell. There's a lot of traffic in the traffic district here. Okay, here's a good place and sit down, have a good old chinwag about Nobel Peace Prize winners in Ethiopia who turned into warlords. Right, just a valley pool dedicated to a better Brisbane. I bet they want to charge money to go in there. Good to see you got in safely. Yeah, thanks, mate. Here in the big city, I'll try not to talk to strangers. I'm going to try to avoid bad habits. No drinking, gambling, loose women. I mean, so many temptations here in the big city. Sister Ellen G. White was right about the evils of the big city. But I still love the big city. Growing up in the country, in Kurumbong and Angwin, the Napa Valley, made me want to be a city boy. Thank God I'm a city boy. Because in a city, you can gather together with fellow writers. Right? There aren't a lot of writing groups, writing clubs, writers' parties, or writing organizations in the country. Man, wherever I go, all I'm in is Brisbane Central traffic area. It's got to be something nicer than just Brisbane Central traffic area. There's a lovely river around here. There's the University of Queensland. Well, at least we're all on an adventure together. And I spot a seat up here where I can sit down and share my profound insights into situationism and what can turn the Nobel Peace Prize winner into an Ethiopian warlord. Oy vey. And how aromatherapy can help you get over long COVID. What about narrative therapy? Right? I mean, lovely smells are all very well and good. But what about the joys of narrative therapy? So Brisbane reminds me a little bit of Sacramento. Is that a fair comparison? Yeah, we've got the glamour and beauty of Sacramento. I mean, Sacramento without the state capital. Well, Brisbane's a state capital. So where's the central business district? Like, where are things really going on? I need a beautiful, glamorous view. Blessings. What's with the gay mask? Well, in enclosed areas, like tightly confined space, like a bus or a train, I think it's a good idea to wear a mask. It's not gay. It's not wrong. It's healthy and loving. You're not against things that are healthy and loving, are you, Elliot? So, it seems maybe 5% of people, 10% of people on the plane were wearing a mask, but I was one of them. 5% of people on the bus were wearing a mask, but I was one of them. Like, I'm here for a holiday, mate. Bad look to mask while streaming. Don't you think it adds like an air of mystery? Don't you think it gives me more street cred? What about looking like I'm about to rob a bank or something? Like, how many bank robbers, live stream? I think this is a wholly unexploited niche that I can get into. And then, partway through the stream, I remove the mask. Wow, Brisbane's just not looking so glamorous. Just looking a little dowdy and industrial. What American cities would you compare it to? Sacramento comes to mind for me. Orlando, Florida, right? Brisbane is the Sacramento or Orlando, Florida of Australia. So I lived in Orlando for 9 months. I lived in and around Sacramento I never lived in Sacramento, but I lived about 45 minutes drive north of Sacramento for about 12 years. So, have you spent time in Sacramento or spent time in Orlando? Does this give you that feeling? Like, where's the river? Where's a good place for some live streaming? Okay, what the hell? What goes on downhill? Okay. Let me play a little bit from the New Yorker for you. I want to increase the intellectual caliber of this conversation that we're having. Where's my phone? Here we go.
Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed drove me around Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia. With a politician's pride, he pointed out some of his recent civic projects: a vast park and a national library, a handicrafts market, a planetarium still under construction. Throughout the city were government buildings that he'd built or remade: the Federal Police Headquarters, the Ministry of Mines, an Artificial Intelligence Center, the Ministry of Defense. In the Entoto Hills above Addis, he had established a complex of recreational areas to showcase his Green Legacy initiative, aimed at making Ethiopia a pioneer in sustainable agriculture and renewable energy. He boasted of having planted 18 billion trees. If in 5 years the world does not recognize what we have done, he said, as he negotiated, then I am not your brother.
Sounds like a nice guy.
Part of his vision, he explained, to transform his country into a modern state.
Right.
Ethiopia.
So he's got a vision to plant 18 million trees. Sounds like a lovely guy. My heart will always be in Addis Ababa. You too, right? Me too. You too, me too. Say you, say me. There's got to be a river around here somewhere, mate.
Is Africa's second most populous nation, with the largest economy in East Africa. But it is ethnically fractured, with more than 80 distinct groups, many of them beset by old enmities and overlapping territorial claims.
Whoa, that's a shame. Apparently, diversity in Ethiopia isn't like a great thing. Like, I never would have expected that. I thought only the United States of America, because of like evil capitalism, had a problem with diversity, but now it seems that even glamorous, diverse Ethiopia has a problem with diversity. That's pretty shocking. I mean, this is a politician with a vision, mate. He wants to plant trees. Like, what could possibly go wrong? Who knew that diversity would create trouble?
The power in 2018, promising to heal the country's divisions. A former soldier and intelligence officer, he was warned to parents from Ethiopia's two main religious communities. His mother from the Orthodox Christian majority, and his father from the sizable Muslim minority. His guiding principle was metaber, an Amharic term meaning synergy, or coming together. Abiy, at 46, could be mistaken for a prosperous real estate agent.
Yeah, he just wanted to bring the country together, mate. So he's got a Christian mother, a Muslim father, and what probably goes without saying is that the Muslim father wasn't particularly into his Islam if he married a Christian. And I'm going to wager that the Christian mother wasn't particularly into her Christianity if she married a Muslim. So what one cynic said about interfaith dialogue, right? That it's Jews who don't really care for Judaism, talking to Christians who don't really care that much for Christianity.
Medium height, trimmed goatee, and a wardrobe of khakis, casual shirts, and gold-rimmed Cartier sunglasses. He projects the self-assurance of a motivational speaker. Soon after taking office, he published a best-selling book about the transformative power of metaber, which is sold at roadside stalls alongside volumes by Tony Robbins and Jordan Peterson.
Tony Robbins, Jordan Peterson, and this lovely chap. All right? They're big sellers in Addis Ababa. Who knew that Jordan Peterson and Tony Robbins was like such a big deal in Ethiopia?
Conversation. Abiy does most of the talking, but he demands constant feedback.
Okay, so another African big man who does most of the talking, who talks really big, and who has big glamorous plans that don't necessarily work out too well in real life. This is pretty shocking.
It's not enough to nod along with it. He wants to know what you think, if only to disagree. Abiy writes in his book that human beings have a direct existential need to be free of massacres and wars. And not long after his election, he delivered a surprising advance. For 2 decades, Ethiopia had been in a hostile standoff with its neighbor, Eritrea, the lingering after effect of a war that claimed.
So this guy was going to bring peace to Africa. He was going to bring peace to Ethiopia and Eritrea. He wrote a best-selling book. He talked big. He was all into planting trees. What's not to love? He's got a Muslim father, a Christian mother. And this all sounds like a winning formula for peace. And to think that this might have turned south. So sad.
As many as 100,000 lives. Abiy forged a peace deal, which ended the standoff and earned him a Nobel Peace Prize in recognition of his efforts to promote reconciliation, solidarity, and social justice. At the Nobel ceremony,
I'm pretty shocked this guy's into the environment, he's into social justice, he's into interfaith dialogue, he's into self-help. Won a Nobel Peace Prize. Pretty shocking that he would become a warlord.
in Stockholm, he invoked both the Bible and the Quran. Before we can harvest peace dividends, we must plant seeds of love, forgiveness, and reconciliation in the hearts and minds of our citizens.
Oh man, this guy sounds like a bloke after my own heart. Wants to plant seeds of peace and love into the hearts of his fellow citizens. I mean, how good is that? like some nice plants filled with peace and love, right? Real plants, plants of peace and love, self-help, interfaith dialogue. I mean, this guy sounds like a winner.
But the spirit of reconciliation did not flourish in Abiy's Ethiopia.
Whoa! So even with that beautiful formula of trees and seeds of peace and love and reconciliation and interfaith dialogue, like somehow the racial and religious and cultural and ethnic differences seem to be too strong for all these scents and plants and seeds of love.
Yeah. In November 2020, just 11 months after he was awarded the Nobel, violence erupted in Tigray, a rebellious region in the north. Abiy's army became embroiled in a conflict that involved gruesome ethnic killing, gang rapes, and mass executions. Hundreds of thousands of Tigrayans were soon on the brink of starvation, while others poured across the Sudanese border to find refuge in hastily built camps. The violence has sparked an international argument about Abiy. His supporters say that he is a modernizer, whose only mistake was that he moved too fast to overturn Ethiopia's corrupt old.
So help me out here. Who are the good guys in Ethiopia? I'm not really as up on my Ethiopian politics as I should be. So help me out, help a Jew out. Like, I'm kind of lost in the big city of Brisbane. Like, who are the good guys in Ethiopia? Like, who are the people in Ethiopia that we should be supporting? Like, who are the forces of, I think, modernism, right? Being modern is good, progressive, all about, human rights and the old peace and love and reconciliation. I'm kind of confused because it sounds like the guy who was yakking on about peace and love and reconciliation, that his army was murdering thousands of people and raping the women.
Order. His critics accuse him of starting an ethnic conflict in order to favor his political allies. Some demand that his Nobel be revoked and warn that the unrest that has attended his time in office is spreading through the region. But as Abiy and I toured Ethiopia, he seemed to want to talk about everything but the conflict that had engulfed his country.
Whoa! So this African big man, this Ethiopian big man, he wants to talk about everything but the ethnic conflict enveloping his country. Who would have thought that? So, sounds like, what's so funny about peace, love, and understanding? Grand opening beats a grand closing. My heart will always be in Addis Ababa, but where the bloody hell is the Brisbane River? Right? I want to get to the river before the sun. Brisbane River. All right. 3 miles, 1 mile. Brisbane River Walk, just 1 mile away. Okay, so I need to go. Oh, I need to go the opposite direction, and then we'll get to the river, mate. Okay, beautiful Brisbane Walk, just 1 mile away. Have faith. So this is
from inside his motorcade, it was as if there were no war going on at all. In Crabs in a Bucket, a forthcoming book, the Somali author Nuruddin Farah likens Ethiopian politics to a destructive Groundhog Day. Farah, who was 76, grew up in a part of Somalia that was ceded to Ethiopia by the colonial British after they ousted the Italians.
So who are the good guys between the Somalis and the Ethiopians? Like, who are the good guys in Somali politics? Like, who are the freedom-loving modernists that we should be supporting in Somalia? Help me out here.
In the Second World War. Think of a demolition site when you think about Ethiopia, a country under constant rebuilding, one whose laws are often dismantled to accommodate the new ruler, and whose people's nerves are frequently shredded before another regime gains power, only to demolish what has gone on before. Farah writes, Ethiopian leaders are famous for telling big and small porcupines to their fellow.
Wow, I didn't know this. Do you know that Ethiopian leaders are famous for talking big, but delivering little? It sounds like their leaders are kind of some version of con men. Make a lot of promises, use a lot of grand rhetoric, but when it comes to delivering the goods, they tend to be a little shaky.
Citizens and to the rest of the world. They know how to start conflicts that lead to wars, not how to resolve conflicts. Farah's assessment is bleak.
Yeah, how long must Africa wait for a 4D safari? Yeah, I think I'd like to lead a guided tour through the best of Africa, and we'll explore the riches of Africa's architectural history. We'll look at some of the greatest erections in Africa. I mean, this will be great. This will be epic. We'll spend days delving into the cultural achievements. Okay, maybe we'll go.
The past half-century of Ethiopian politics largely supports it. In 1970...
Okay, so did you know that the past half-century of Ethiopian politics has been rather negative? Like before then, didn't they have Wakanda? It wasn't Wakanda just like absolutely amazing? But frankly, I blame colonialism. Now, we are going to get to the river here.
A military faction called the Derg seized power, overthrowing the emperor, Haile Selassie. The Derg's leader, Colonel Mengistu...
Wait, wasn't Selassie a good guy? I thought he was a good guy. So confusing.
Haile Mariam presided over a murderous purge known as the Red Terror, intended to remake the country as a communist stronghold. Mengistu had...
Wow, so communism apparently didn't work out too well in Ethiopia. 40. Have you looked into why Russia went into the Donbass? Yes, I have. All right? They were trying to pursue Russian self-interest by smashing Ukraine and extending a neutral space, or at least perhaps a Russia-dominated space, to make themselves less vulnerable to invasion. I think that's why Russia went into the Donbass, and there are a lot of ethnic Russians there who you'd think would be sympathetic.
Several dozen rivals machine-gunned at the National Palace, and subsequently held a ceremony in the newly renamed Revolution Square, in which he swore to eliminate voracious feudalists, hired fascists, and running dogs, and smashed bottles filled with red liquid, symbolizing his enemy's blood. Even as the country suffered one of its periodic droughts, Mengistu...
A mention of Ukrainian military action against their own citizens. Dude. I don't think Russia went into Ukraine because they were concerned about Ukrainian actions. And Russia's not exactly on some civil rights, human rights crusade. I mean, Russia's pursuing its self-interest, just like most of us do. So I'm sure Ukraine has been committing more than its share of atrocities. I'm sure Russia's been committing more than their share of atrocities. Wars tend to escalate. Wars tend to get nasty.
Launched a Stalinist collectivization campaign, and hundreds of thousands died of starvation.
So I don't look at the Russia versus Ukraine war as good versus evil, good guys versus bad guys. Right? I see two different groups pursuing their self-interest. Was the regime... Damn. Really not keeping up with the chat as well as I should be. This is not some of my best work.
In 1991, the Derg was overthrown by a coalition of rebel militias. Abiy, who was then in the 7th grade, left school for a time to join the cause. When the fighting was over, the fiercest and most...
Oh, was the regime change in Ukraine legal in 2014? Well, that a democratically elected pro-Russian leader in 2014 in Ukraine, and they violently overthrew a democratically elected pro-Russian leader with considerable encouragement and direction by the United States. So, really shocking that Russia interfered in the American 2016 elections. How many dozens of times do you think that the United States has interfered in other countries' elections or helped to overthrow democratically elected leaders? So that's what we did. 2014, the United States helped to overthrow a democratically elected pro-Russian Ukrainian leader.
Cohesive of the rebel groups, the Tigray People's Liberation Front, took charge of the governing coalition and led the country's politics for the next 27 years. The TPLF, as it was known, imposed a program of economic modernization, which in time produced striking gains. For a decade and a half, the growth rate hovered around 10%, and Ethiopia became known among boosters as the China of Africa.
Yeah, I often call Ethiopia the China of Africa. Yeah, the United States unconstitutionally, against the rule of law, helped to overthrow Ukraine's democratically elected pro-Russian leader in 2014. Absolutely. And the United States would love to foment regime change in Russia, in Iran, in China, in many other places. Sometimes when the United States foments regime change, it may at least temporarily be for the better, and plenty of times it is for the worse. But whether it's for the better or the worse, it's very exciting. It gives our foreign policy establishment something to do. All right? How do you feel important if you work in the United States, foreign policy service, the State Department, etc.? Do you feel important by not intervening in other countries' domestic affairs? No. You get your feeling of importance from intervention.
The real wealth went largely to those who were already rich, connected with the government, which controlled
Everything I know about Ethiopia, I learned from Sam Kinison. What did he say? Look, there's sand here. Go to where there's food. Here there's nothing but sand. Move. That was Sam Kinison's perspective.
much of the economy. And the leadership tolerated little dissent, imprisoning and torturing thousands of political opponents. The problems of ethnic division also lingered. The Tigrayans came from a region in the north that contained ancient sites of civilization, and they thought of themselves
Ancient sites of civilization, just unbelievable sites of civilization in Ethiopia. I mean, the stuff that puts the Sistine Chapel, absolutely to shame. The great cathedrals of Notre Dame in France, just absolutely put to shame by the cultural artifacts of Ethiopia. So there's a Brisbane River walk around here somewhere.
as the heirs of a profound historical lineage, but they were a relatively small group, making up just 6% of Ethiopia's population, and they were trying to retain control of a fractious country. In an effort to reset the balance of power, the TPLF split Ethiopia into semi-autonomous regions, encompassing the traditional territories of the main ethnic groups. The effect, a senior Western official told me, was to seed the future with ethnic problems, creating a system of 11 mini-states in near-perpetual tension. For much of the 20th century, the Amhara, the country's second-largest group, had dominated Ethiopian politics. Now the government gave the Tigrayans a portion of land that the Amhara regarded as theirs, provoking an enduring resentment. Just about everywhere an internal border was created, people felt that their traditional lands had been breached and that they had been shut out of power. In 2020,
So there may be some places where liberal democracy is not the best fit. Right? Some places need a strong man to govern them. That's temporarily. Now, some places need an autocratic regime. Right? Not everyone does better with liberal democracy. I'm glad to live in a liberal democracy. But liberal democracy may not be the best template for places like Somalia or Ethiopia or Iraq. Right? I think different peoples suited to different types of government. Right? Different peoples have different predispositions. Unless you're able to trust people outside of your kin, it's pretty hard to establish a liberal democracy.
12, a non-Tigrayan became prime minister, Hailemariam Desalegn, a mild-mannered Walida who had trained as a water engineer. But Tigrayans still held key positions in the government, the armed forces, and the state-controlled economy.
Right, so if you've got a nation that's just composed of warring tribes, warring clans, warring families, not so easy to install a liberal democracy.
Ethnic militias clashed, and resentments festered. There was particular discontent among the Oromo, the country's largest group. As the government pushed to expand the capital city into surrounding Oromo villages, many people complained that their land had been seized without compensation.
Yeah. So there's not a rich history of the rule of law in Ethiopia and Somalia. And they don't exactly have strong constitutional legal processes with regard to who owns what land.
Protests broke out, and the unrest spread to other regions. In 2018, Haile Mariam abruptly stepped down as prime minister, calling for reforms that would lead to sustainable peace and democracy. His departure gave Abiy his opening. Abiy has an unshakable belief in his ability to overcome obstacles, not just to see the future, but to shape it. I used to tell all my friends 30 years ago that I was going to be PM, and everyone took it as a joke, he said on one of our drives. Then once I became PM, and I made peace with Eritrea, I asked my Minister of Foreign Affairs, "Do you think I could get the Nobel?" He said, "It's true, you have done everything you promised, but on this, I am not sure." And then I won.
Yeah. So apparently not all peace treaties, last that long when there are fundamental conflicts of interest between groups, right? That's why there's peace, and that's why there's war. Right? That's the primary explanation, is conflicts of interest. Different groups have different interests, and to the extent they can be reconciled, then different groups can live together in peace. To the extent that peace can be incentivized, right, then you're on a good wicket. But when group interests are divergent and dramatically so, then you're going to have a hard time sustaining peace.
The Nobel. Before Abiy took office, he did not seem to outside observers like an obvious candidate for a country seeking radical change. He had spent his early career working within the ruling coalition. After rising to the rank of lieutenant colonel in the military, he went into politics in 2010, winning a seat in parliament. He served briefly as Minister of Science and Technology before becoming Vice President of the Oromia region. By Abiy's account, though, he was already agitating from the inside. "I was always telling the former PMs that I was going to replace them," he told me. "You know, they can kill you for that." But I said it.
Any comments on the aesthetics of the Brisbane Boys College uniform? No comments as yet.
When the position of Prime Minister opened up, Abiy's candidacy offered a new vision for the country, shrinking the Ethiopian state to allow greater freedom and a more democratic system. It would also put an Oromo in charge of the country for the first time. In April 2018, after a brief and contested shuffling of legislative leaders, Parliament
Okay, this
elected
is
him.
fascinating, but let's find our way to the river. Okay, so the river is that away. Okay. So the river is, what is it? Okay, it's that way. Okay. I can see clearly now.
To the job. Within days of coming to power, Abiy moved to overturn the status quo. He began by releasing thousands of political prisoners and decried the use of torture in Ethiopia's prisons. He also ended a state of emergency imposed by the TPLF and launched an overhaul of the country's security agencies. The first months of his tenure were dizzyingly ambitious. He announced his intention to privatize state-owned enterprises, including telecommunications and aviation, and sought agreements to give his landlocked...
Well, the walk signs here don't have that buzz. Look, the river finds the sea. Okay, I'll follow the river to the sea.
nation access to ports in Djibouti, Sudan, Somaliland, and Kenya. He went on to implement an economic plan focused on 5 areas: mining, information and communications technology, manufacturing, agriculture, and tourism.
Yeah, what's the major information technology to come out of Addis Ababa? Like, what are Ethiopia's chief intellectual property gifts to the world or accomplishments? Like, what's the greatest information technology that comes out of Africa?
In the West, his advocacy of freedom in politics and especially in the market drew praise. The Financial Times called him Africa's new talisman. Abiy spoke about his initiatives with unwavering confidence. I wanted to add value for my country, and I am doing it, he told me. But his leadership was quickly met with violent opposition. Barely 2 months into his term, as he addressed a crowd in downtown Addis, an assailant mounted a grenade attack in which 2 people died and scores were wounded. A group of policemen were arrested for failing to prevent the attack.
So people like Gandhi, Martin Luther King, can only really mount non-violent civil protest if the people they're fighting against are basically moral, right? If the people you're fighting against aren't basically moral, that's not going to work too well. Oh man, I feel a little overdressed.
Abiy's sympathizers saw it as evidence that he had enemies on the inside. In June 2019, the military attempted a coup in the Amhara region, killing the region's president and the National Armed Forces Chief of Staff. Abiy carried on with his reforms and increasingly worked to force TPLF members out of his administration. That November, he eliminated the governing coalition that the Tigrayans had led. In its place, he devised a new political vehicle, the Prosperity Party. Essentially the same coalition that he had disbanded, except for the TPLF, which refused to join. The Tigrayan leadership decamped to northern Ethiopia. In the regional capital of Mekelle, the former national...
Okay, where's the river? Oh man, I need to go... What the hell? I need to go... Nope, I need to go this way. Okay, to the left. I got it now. We're on our way. There's this glamorous
government became an alternate center of power, with much of the country's bureaucratic expertise and a significant portion of its military force. In 2020, when Abiy postponed national elections, saying that COVID-19 presented too great a threat, the Tigrayans...
Isn't that nice of him? This Nobel Peace Prize winner had cancelled the 2019 elections because COVID posed too much of a threat. I mean, how considerate is that? I mean, that's our overlords, like really going all out to protect our health and welfare. Maybe Donald Trump should have tried that. Maybe canceling the election due to fear of COVID.
Defiantly held elections of their own. The TPLF received 98% of the vote, giving its chairman, Ethiopian control of the regional Congress. The war began 2 months later, with what the TPLF has described as both a preemptive operation and a legitimate act of self-defense against forces that Abiy had mobilized around the region. Before daybreak, November 4th, Tigrayan soldiers attacked a key Ethiopian army garrison near Mekelle. Within hours, Abiy's warplanes and army units were on their way to counter the attack and to seize Mekelle. After 3 weeks of fierce fighting, Abiy declared military operations completed, and the Red Zion and his comrades vanished into the Tigrayan countryside. But Abiy hadn't fought by himself. His forces weren't strong enough. Instead, he made a kind of devil's bargain. To take on the TPLF, he had formed a military alliance with Eritrea, which has a powerful army and one of the world's most repressive governments. He had also solicited support from Amhara militias. Both the Eritreans and the Amhara had old grievances with the Tigrayans. During the fighting, reports spread of gang rapes and of widespread killings of civilians. The U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, said that ethnic cleansing seemed to be taking place. Abiy's government heatedly denied the charge, but videos were circulating that appeared to show persuasive evidence of war crimes. One particularly gruesome video.
So sometimes making peace is the best strategic move. Sometimes making war is the best strategic move. God forbid, sometimes ethnic cleansing is the best strategic move for your group to assert its power. I mean, Deuteronomy 7 nationalism. God commands the Israelites, right, and they enter Canaan to go to town on the Canaanites to destroy them. I see the Brisbane River. There's got to be a nice walk around here somewhere. Right? Deuteronomy 7, isn't that kind of the attitude that this guy was taking?
From January 2021 shows Ethiopian soldiers filming one another as they murder at least 30 residents of a village in central Tigray. The soldiers urge one another on as they lead captives, young men in civilian clothes, to a cliff and begin shooting. One man calls out to a comrade to shoot his victim again because he is still moving. Another tells his fellow soldiers, use no more than 2 bullets. 2 is enough to kill them. In the end, the soldiers toss their victims off the cliff, shooting some of them again on ledges where they have fallen.
Okay.
The soldiers carry out the killings with an air of complicit glee. Their victims are eerily silent. Finally, in March 2021, Abiy acknowledged that the Eritreans had been involved in the fighting and allowed that atrocities may have been committed. He promised, somewhat vaguely, to seek justice.
Well,
Western observers were outraged, but Abiy...
Hey, the guy's promised to seek justice. I mean, what more could you want from a leader of Ethiopia than a promise to seek justice? I mean, I just feel so much better. All right, we're outside the Admiralty Towers. Very nice, very nice.
His constituents seemed not to care. 3 months later, he held a national election, excluding Tigray, and easily secured a new 5-year term.
So apparently his constituents care that much about outgroups. So I don't know anything about Ethiopian politics and don't know anything about Eritrea. I know a little bit about in-groups and out-groups. And apparently the dynamic works very similarly in Ethiopia and Eritrea as it does elsewhere in the world and throughout history. So it's such a simple model. Most people don't really care much about outgroups. It seems to have tremendous explanatory and predictive value. Okay, you want the glamorous Brisbane River?
Was new beginnings. Within the government, though, some of his loyalists were appalled. When Abiy took power, he had built an inclusive administration with women in cabinet positions and Tigrayans, those who weren't loyal to the TPLF, occupying key posts. Among them was Berhane Kederemariam, who served as second in command of the Ethiopian embassy in Washington, D.C.
Okay, yeah, I need to, well, just attach my cinematography. I'll admit it. But here we go, got to get out of the sun. Right, getting an overheating warning. Social justice and democracy, what more can a man ask for? The city cat goes to UQ. You can use the card to go there. Thanks, Tim Humphreys. Oh, by the way, Tim Humphreys, your Centrelink or TravelLink card is out of date. I had to buy a new one. But thank you for the offer. You're in the right zone. Yep, we're here. Yes, injera when wrapped around curried vegetables can be quite tasty. The rain is gone. I can see clearly now, like the river finds the sea. Any comments on the aesthetics of Brisbane Boys College uniform, the architecture and landscaping? Don't really know much about aesthetics, architecture. Mbappe is a pretty cool name and a pretty cool player. Everything I know about Ethiopia I learned from Sam Kennison. Okay. Thank you, Tim Humphreys, showing me around the glories of Brisbane Airport and DFO Shopping Centre, very fancy food court. Here, New Zealand banned the ACT, the act of smoking for anyone born after 2009. Yeah, that seems rather Seems rather edgy, does it not? Okay.
At the beginning, Berhane told me he was hopeful that Abiy could bring the country together, but he quickly developed doubts. In July 2018, Abiy visited the US and spoke before a crowd of expatriate Ethiopians. As Berhane introduced him, the crowd began insulting him for being Tigrayan and jeering at him to get off the stage. He hoped that Abiy would say something to calm things down. Instead, the Prime Minister went on with his speech as if nothing had happened. When Berhane registered concern afterward, he told me Abiy chided him for being too sensitive. Berhane reassured himself that it was an isolated incident. I thought things would resolve themselves, he said. But then the war broke out, and the news emerged that the Eritreans were fighting on Abiy's side. We were told to publicly deny the reports, but how could we deny it? Berhane said. That was a sign to me that the government would destabilize not just Ethiopia, but the whole region. When the videos of war crimes came to light, Berhane resigned from his post. For people who had believed in Abiy's early promise, the videos felt like a betrayal. I couldn't control my feelings, Berhane said.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I too feel absolutely betrayed by this Nobel Peace Prize winner. I don't know about you, I invested so many hopes and dreams in this bloke. And to see things, spin out of control in Ethiopia and Eritrea and Somalia, I could never have predicted that. This is truly shocking.
I still can't get it out of my mind. Abiy's residence, a modernist mansion with exercise machines on the lawn, is surrounded by relics of Ethiopia's contested history. It sits at the foot of a hill where Emperor Menelik II, who ruled from 1889 to 1913, built his royal compound. Menelik was a canny, brutal Amhara who beat back the first Italian conquest of Ethiopia and went on to expand his empire by using European firearms against rival ethnic groups. He also brought the country its first automobiles, postal service, and electrical and telephone lines. The palace where Menelik lived is also where Ethiopia's last emperor, Haile Selassie, grew up. Known as the King of Kings, conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, elect of God, Selassie was hailed as the culmination of a dynasty that, according to legend...
Yeah, maybe Ethiopia just needs another emperor, right? Maybe, this liberal democracy isn't the best thing right now.
...had begun with the union of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. He became a figure of global renown in 1936 when, after Mussolini invaded Ethiopia, he gave an eloquent speech at the League of Nations.
Wow, he gave an eloquent speech, guys. Yeah, anyone who can give an eloquent speech, that must mean that they're a good guy, right? If they can give an eloquent speech, then we should fall in behind them.
To warn of the rise of fascism. Selassie was a crucial proponent of the...
Great. Selassie, man, he gave an eloquent speech and he warned us about the rise of fascism. Like, what more do you want from a bloke?
Anti-colonial Pan-African movement and a vocal opponent of apartheid who was personally acquainted with Mao, de Gaulle, and Queen Elizabeth II.
Wow, sounds like a great guy. Enemy of apartheid, friend to Chairman Mao. Like, what more do you need? Top bloke.
He was especially close with the U.S. and made state visits to every president from Dwight Eisenhower to Richard Nixon. In October 1963, John F. Kennedy drove with him past cheering crowds in the back seat of a gleaming convertible. At the height of his reign, Selassie built the Jubilee Palace downhill from his former home. One afternoon, Abiy took me there. The palace, he explained, was the centerpiece of his Addis Ababa renovation. In the basement, he ushered me past armed soldiers and through a doorway. Stretching out his arms, he announced, "This is the gold room." It was filled with ornaments, goblets.
Yeah, sounds like a great guy, man. Strong man, an emperor. Really made Ethiopia count for something on the world stage.
Candelabra, a pair of ornately carved thrones. Abiy opened a cabinet and handed me a hefty plate. With a thrilled look, he said, "Everything in here is gold." Abiy's curators had cataloged more than 200,000 artifacts from the palace, and concrete block storehouses had been erected to protect them during the restoration. There were globes of every size, elephant tusks, more thrones, the emperor's clothes, including white Chelsea boots and his...
And he got all that great stuff through completely honest, ethical, and legal means. And that's the wonderful thing about Selassie. He did everything by the book. Just a fine, fine African. Very law-abiding, very ethical.
Uniform from the Second World War. Abiy gestured to an antique exercise bike and joked, they thought only people nowadays worried about their weight. In the garages were the emperor's car collection. 200 vehicles, from a horse-drawn hearse to antique Bentleys.
And how did he get all this fine stuff? Just by doing good, just by doing kindness, just by innovation, through entrepreneurship, through helping people. That's how he accumulated all this stuff.
Abiy pointed out an armor-plated Cadillac limo, believed to be among the last cars that Selassie bought before his overthrow, and guided me into the back seat. It had blue carpet and a special footstool customized to imperial specifications. The emperor was not a tall man. Abiy gazed at Selassie's seal, a crowned lion wielding a flag, and marveled, everything has his emblem. Do you see? The last known photograph of Selassie, taken at the moment of his arrest, shows him a slender man of 82.
Why would they arrest him? I mean, it's not like he was stealing. It's not like he was oppressing anyone.
Erect posture and a clipped beard. He is standing on the palace steps, surrounded by military officers, just before he was humiliatingly forced into a VW Beetle. Under arrest, he was taken up the hill, back to the palace where he had spent his childhood. He died there, in his bedroom, in 1975, allegedly murdered by Mengistu's security chief. Mengistu secretly buried Selassie underneath the floorboards of an office nearby, apparently exulting in...
So I always walk around with my Museum of Tolerance tote bag, because I'm here to promote love and tolerance in the world. So this bag goes to Sydney, goes to Brisbane, goes right round Australia, mate, sharing the message of radical love and inclusion.
Walking over his body. Abiy seems to regard Selassie as the ultimate validation of Ethiopia's claim to national grandeur. But the emperor is a complicated icon. To his admirers, he is the crucial unifying figure in the country's modern history. To detractors, he was an Amhara nationalist who brought about unity by squashing dissent and making Amharic the official language of the bureaucracy.
Selassie embodied
By
everything
developing
New
the
Yorkers...
grounds, Abiy is...
Selassie embodied everything New Yorkers have come to love about Africa. Magnificent man. Great guy.
Claiming Ethiopia's imperial past. For years, Selassie's compound was closed off, and Ethiopians were afraid even to approach its outer walls for fear of trigger-happy guards. Now, a zoo occupies the space of a former military prison. Abiy is having a new palace built up the hill from his current residence. When it is complete, he said, he will move there and open the entire compound to the public under its new name, Unity Park.
That's what Ethiopia needs, a unity park. Man, why didn't anyone think of this before? Good old unity. I think like some unity parks to bring people together.
After Abiy moves out, footbridges and pedestrian tunnels will connect the compound with a huge new park area across the road where a small army of Ethiopian workers was putting the finishing touches on gardens and a planetarium under the watch of Chinese contractors. Not everything could be outsourced that way, though.
Yeah, so all the difficult stuff they're outsourcing to China.
As we passed the steps of Jubilee Palace, where Selassie had been forced into the Beetle, Abiy pointed to some eroded stone bas-reliefs and whispered, I will have the Italians do the restoration work on the fine things. I can't have the Chinese doing that. You understand?
Uh-oh, that sounds kind of racist. Have the Italians do the restoration work. I can't have the Chinese do that.
Before our excursions, Abiy liked to meet me in a favorite spot, under a tree in the palace compound, a short walk from his residence. A butler supplied coffee, served, in the Ethiopian tradition, in tiny ceramic cups.
Yeah, ye should do a concert here in Brisbane. Like, create a unity park, to a Unity concert.
After we finished, Abi would ask if I had enjoyed it, and when I assured him that I had, he'd say, "Shall we go?" Though Abi rarely talks to reporters, he seemed happy to spend days showing me his development projects. He and his delegates took me to see a sprawling banana plantation.
So yeah, why would this guy think that the New Yorker would be so friendly to him? Like he was eager to spend days with this New Yorker reporter.
Of a scheme to promote agribusiness, a new airport under construction, and a recently completed industrial park in the city of Hawassa, one of 12 that he is building around the country. Abi's aides talked in awed tones about his tireless energy. A Western observer with extensive experience in the region put it differently. He has proven amazingly adept at consolidating power and then seemingly having no objective for using it that lasts longer than a month. One morning, Abi's...
Whoa, it sounds like this guy's a big talker, but not so strong on the follow-through. Sounds like he's great at producing beautiful words, not so great at implementing beautiful policies. Pretty shocked.
Chief of Staff, an adroit man in his early 30s named Mesfin Malaku, drove me to join Abi and his wife, Zanash Tayachu, as they checked in on some of their projects. Zanash, an ethnic Amhara from the 17th century of Gondar, met Abi when they were both serving in the military, and not long afterward, she converted to Pentecostalism, his religion. Zanash is a gospel singer with a stirring voice. YouTube is full of clips of her performing, audiences swaying in time. She is otherwise a shy person who largely stays out of view, raising their children. She and Abi have 3 teenage daughters and a young adopted son. The First Lady was sponsoring a program that built bread factories throughout the country.
Yeah, a lovely program building bread factories. Wonder how much follow-through there was, wonder how much execution there was on this beautiful sounding idea.
Alleviate the problem of food production. Mesfin explained that on today's trip, she and Abi were visiting a young developer who had volunteered to add a bakery to a cluster of apartment towers that he was building. When we approached, Abi was grilling the man about his progress and urging him to build more bakeries around town. The developer nodded with a neutral expression, but he was clearly taken aback. At another construction site, Abi interrogated a developer who had been building a soup kitchen, a tin-roofed structure of concrete blocks with a cement floor. As we walked away, Mesfin confided, "The PM is not happy. He wants the soup kitchen to be bigger." Abi's interventions can seem counterproductive, even to his allies, as one of his advisors told me. Sometimes we are angry at him for planting flowers when we have so many other things wrong in the country. But he says, this is for the future generations. His attitude is, why only concentrate on the problems? We need to show that we are more than the conflict.
Yeah, what a guy, man. I'm very inspired by learning about him. And he's complicated, right? This guy's got hidden depths. On the one hand, Nobel Peace Prize winner. On the other hand, major mind behind warlords and major aggression and ethnic cleansing. So just many layers to this bloke, right? Complicated bloke, right? You can't just stereotype him as your typical Nobel Prize winner, right? This is a man with hidden depths.
Abi finds funding for his ventures wherever he can. He has held fundraisers on the sites of Addis's new parks, where he can lean on his country's billionaires, many of whom built their fortunes under the old regime. In 2020, his wife's office announced that it had solicited donations to construct 20 schools in the countryside. Abi gave some $2 million in profits from his book to build more.
Wow, he made $2 million from his book. I mean, it sells in Ethiopia as well as Jordan Peterson and Tony Robbins. Must be good stuff. Talk to you later.